Whenever you do an oil change on a Volkswagen, especially if it has an oil cooler here underneath or above the oil filter, always tighten up the nut. Sometimes what happens when you take the filter off, the nut loosens up and then you get an oil leak from the top of the filter, on the top of the oil cooler. So always check that nut, make sure it's tight. Just drained out this fuel filter on the Vanagon just by sloshing it like this and watching the fuel run down the glass. I can tell that there's water in here, so I'm just gonna let this sit for a while. I don't know if you can see how it's beating down the glass. I'm just gonna let it sit for a while, and I'll make you bet we're gonna see some water, obviously some rust as well, and I might have to smoke test the tank and see where the water intrusion is. And here's the fuel sample a few hours later. It's hard to tell, but there's 3 layers. The gasoline on the top, the water at the very bottom, and then a bunch of rust particles in between. Let me see if I can get a light from behind. You can see a murky layer here. Anyways, that's it. Dirty, contaminated gasoline. If the dash lights on your Vanagon aren't working, check, and you already replaced the bulb, check the printed circuit. You can see how gray that contact looks, the printed circuit. This is a nice golden color. This one here is dirty or pitted. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to look over the camera. You can try to clean it with a bit of sandpaper. Obviously don't take too much off, but you can see there's a better color coming through now. It's hard to see, but you get the idea. For all you guys not familiar with the Vanagon instrument cluster, that's what it looks like, or at least the front. You've got 3 dash bulbs, one for the speedometer, one for the tachometer or a clock. If there's no tachometer, then there's a clock here. There's a digital clock here as well on the ones that have a tach. And then so there's a bulb here, there's a bulb here, focus, and a bulb here. It's always a good idea to replace all 3. When one of them goes, Murphy's Law, you know, you replace this one, next thing you know, one of those was gonna go. And we all like comebacks, don't we? So replace all 3. 30-year-old E34 rear shocks. That's not bad. And they are original BMW shocks. 30 years old, 270,000 kilometers, let's say 280,000. That's not bad at all. Let's see how long my KYBs will last. 2008 Rabbit, the hose wasn't quite sitting right, and I could tell the hose clamp wasn't sitting quite right, and there seemed to be a gap right here. So I just went to reposition it, but I couldn't push it on any further, so I took it off again. Or not again, I took it off. This is first time customer. And this is how it was sitting. There was no fault codes. I do check fuel trims every time I check a car. Fuel trims at idle were close to 0%. Part throttle 7%. So that would make sense that this is a leak when the throttle is open, more so than when the throttle is closed. So that would explain why there were high fuel trims at part throttle. But somebody was in a hurry and just pushed the hose back and didn't pay attention, you know. And then obviously you're sucking dirty air here. Even though it has a clean air filter, you're sucking dirty air here. If you rotate tires and your rear tires that are now at the front are cupped, you can see there's high spots. There's a high spot, low spot, high spot, low spot. That's called cupping. When the tires have high and low spots and you rotate them from the rear to the front, there's more weight on the tires now. They'll be noisier than they were when they were on the back. So you got to make sure to let your customer know you're going to have a bit of road noise, more road noise until the tire wears more evenly again, or until the tread is more even. What was the other point here? Or if you do it yourself, yeah, you just gotta expect, or not expect, just be aware that the tires may be a bit noisier initially. When replacing fuel filters and you've got these push-on lines, you can see this little clip here. You got to push up and then you can release this guy. Same thing on this side, you push up and you release. What you have to make sure is that when you put it all back together, that these little tabs, that they click into place. So grab the tab and try to grab the connection, try to pull it off. If you can pull it off, obviously then the retaining clip didn't come down. So what you can do is you can use a clip, a pick like this, go in from behind and pull the clip down. The reason they sometimes hang up is because of dirt getting in between the clip and the actual connector. So if you pull down on it and then pull on it, you can see that or you feel that it's nice and tight again, and it's not going to come off. So there's a return here. That's the feed, and that's the side. That's the side that goes to the engine. It's a returnless system, so there's only one pressurized fuel line that goes to the front. 2001 Audi TT recirculation flap motor. When you shut the vehicle off or when you shut the blower off, you get this clicking sound going on behind the glove box here. So remove the glove box. I removed the motor here just to verify the issue. So keys on right now, and just turning the heater on. Obviously the blower motor is not connected, but you can see the recirculation flap just opened up. And it was nice and quiet. It would usually, once it bottoms up or tops out at the top, it would click a little bit, and then when you shut the heater blower off, you can see the two flaps moving right there is when it would click as well, or continue to click for a few seconds. Now it's nice and quiet. So it's fairly straightforward. This motor can be replaced without taking the dash off. You don't even have to remove the motor here. The blower motor, but it gives you easier access, and you can manipulate the flap then in order to line up the positioning motor. This is it right here, and it sits right along the side of the housing here. You can sort of see it right there, and there's a white. That's the white lever right there that needs to be connected to it. You'll see better on your car, but point of the video is that it can be replaced with everything in place aside from the glove box. Move the blower motor, and that's it. Is it recording? Yeah, 2000 Beetle. Blue temperature light is on even though the engine is at warm operating temperature. My guess is that the temperature sensor circuit for the instrument cluster is showing the wrong temperature. So I'm just going to instrument cluster. Sorry, I can't screen record with this laptop. Measuring blocks. Measuring block 3, coolant temperature of 50 degrees. So the instrument cluster thinks the engine is cold. I'm just going to go to engine computer, and you'll see it's over 90 degrees. Check engine light is on because of O2 sensor codes. We checked that yesterday. Measuring block 1, 96 degrees. So the temperature sensor in all likelihood is the problem. Obviously you want to check your grounds, etc. It's got an O2, it's a hard O2 fault. Heater circuit is most likely bad, but they're just here for something else, not even the blue light. Just thought I'd let you guys know, if you have a scan tool that can communicate with all modules, not just the engine module. OBD scan tools, OBD2 scan tools are usually engine only. Some of them will do engine, ABS, and transmission. But if you get yourself a good scan tool like VCDS or OBD11, then you can scan all the modules that are in the vehicle. So for instance, if I select here, select modules, you can see there's 15 modules here that I can choose from, or at least I think it's 15. 4, 8, 12, 4, 8, 12, 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 18. Sorry, my eyes aren't focusing. Okay, long story short, if your blue temperature sensor light is on, or if your blue temperature warning light stays on, most likely temperature sensor problem or an open circuit or whatever. A blue sensor is better than a red sensor. A red sensor means you're overheating. Doing handbrake cables on a, I don't know, whatever Gulf it is, but look at this. There's Cheerios down in there. How the hell did Cheerios get there? We have a sneaking suspicion that somebody puts them into the vent outlet back here, through the vent or through the cigarette lighter, ashtray, sorry. Crazy stuff. Tool of the day, brake disc or drum caliper. It's used to measure the size of the brake discs or drum brakes. So this one here is reading 345 millimeters. So I'm measuring from the basically edge to edge of the disc. If you're measuring a drum, you're going to be using this side of the caliper, and you go to the inside of the drum. So if that's the inside edge of the drum, to the inside edge of the drum here, and you just loosen. I'm working one-handed, sorry. So you just adjust it as need be, lock it into place, and take your reading. Nifty tool. Don't use it much. Sometimes you need it. In this case, it's because the brake discs, there's several options for this one depending on the package, S model or whatever. So you have to measure just before you order the parts, otherwise you end up with the wrong parts. So my mother's car is getting new rear brakes. Obviously when you do brakes, you want to clean off the brake pad carrier so that the pads slide nicely. You can see here the pad goes in really nice. What I like to do is I flip the pad inside out, and then I place it on the carrier, and then I slide it back and forth and all the way up to the disc. That can tell you whether or not there's a high spot or a low spot along the carrier. And obviously lube up the area as well, although some people don't prefer to lube. To each his own. The main thing is that these pads are free. If they're too free, and that's why these springs are there here. The springs apply pressure onto the brake pad and keeps them from rattling. However, if there's too much of a gap, it's sitting solid now, I'm lifting up and down, there's no clunking. Okay, but if the pads are too loose, then they can rattle, and or when you go forward and press the brakes, they'll shift. You'll hear a clunk, and then as you back up and brake, they'll move the other way and they'll clunk. But in this case here, I don't hear anything. And again, once the caliper is sitting on top, it's loading up these springs and applying pressure. Main thing though, like I said, these pads need to be able to move all along this carrier seat. Obviously the inner one too. If I can get it in, it's a nice snug fit, nice and solid. and nice and free. Don't forget to lube the sliders. I've mentioned it before in many videos. They got to be sliding nicely in and out. Otherwise you're going to get uneven brake pad wear. I forgot to mention that brake pads sometimes come with brake pad hardware. Some installations don't need it or require it. And if it does, then obviously don't forget to put the new brake hardware on there, or at minimum clean the old stuff and put it on. In this case it's not required, so don't get fooled if something is in the box that you need to use it. Brake pads, as with many parts, are used on different vehicles, even different manufacturers or brands. It's just a generic pad that comes with hardware that may or may not need to be used. Because if you put the hardware on and put the pads on, first of all, you may not even get the pads in. Secondly, you'll start to modify the pads thinking that you need the hardware, and then by modifying them you'll make them fit, but they might fit too tight, and then you're going to get hot spots on the brakes, or the brakes that overheat. So if your caliper assembly had hardware tin, then you need it. If you didn't, then you don't. Obviously, unless somebody forgot to put it on last time. But if that were the case, then the pads would rattle around too much, because this is what takes up the space if there's excessive space. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense as well. That's supposed to be engine coolant. Doesn't quite smell right. And that looks like some kind of stop leak additive. But even the coolant itself still doesn't look like it's supposed to. So I would definitely start with a coolant flush with this one. I challenge anybody to pick a number, any number, and then keep track of when you see it. Again, I'm adamant that I'm not looking for the number on purpose. I just happen to spot 318 wherever I go. Sometimes it doesn't happen for a week or more. Sometimes it happens 5 times in a week. So see what you guys can do. I'm probably not the only person seeing numbers, and I know other people mentioned other numbers, but let's show some proof. Finally got around to watching Split when I came across this.
Did you originally solicit to buy these chicken wings you've so lovingly reheated in a minor suicidal gesture?
Hooters, you can't just throw them out, Dr. Fletcher.
Oh, this is wrong on so many levels. We finished about 3:15, so look around 3:18.
3:18, guys. So I'm at my nephew's house, taking a quick look at the Golf that he inherited, and it had some issues, and I just wanted to see how many miles he's driven since I've seen the car last. And what do I see? 3:18. And as any good nephew would, or son, move over, he lets his mother do the lawn mowing. First Subaru with, come on, 318. Window regulator replacement on a 2007 Rabbit 1K chassis, A5 Mark 5 for those guys that need to know the Mark designation. Simplest regulator to replace. I don't know about all these guys commenting under my videos about Hitler's revenge and how crazy Volkswagen and Audi is with designing certain things. Yes, engineers do create issues or design problems or whatever, but I've seen way worse designs on domestics, Asians, and other vehicles aside from Volkswagen and Audi. Obviously, other generations of Volkswagens and Audis will be different, will be either more complicated. I think this would be the most simplest. But anyways, get off of your high horse with Hitler's revenge. I'm German. Yes, I've been in Canada for 37 years. But all manufacturers have crazy designs. Get over it, get with it, fix it, and don't complain.